Welcome to MPA Connections with me, your host, Lashanti the Siren. This podcast, we'll be diving into the MPA Connect network. This network exists to connect MPA managers across the Caribbean. In this special series, each episode will feature interviews with managers from across the network to show how this initiative is meeting the real needs of MPA managers by tapping into the wealth of real-world experiences and inspiring new approaches and ideas for their marine protected areas. Today, our guest is Shane Young from the Belize Audobon. Welcome.
Hi, good morning.
Awesome. So, Shane, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you work, what you do, and your MPA?
Sure, definitely. So, my name is Shane Young. I am the Marine Protected Areas Manager for the Belize Audubon Society. I manage Half Moon Cay Natural Monument and the Blue Hole Natural Monument. Both were heritage sites, and they're located in Belize.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you even got into this role? Did you always know that you wanted to work with marine protected areas?
So, first and foremost, I have a bachelor's in tourism management. Interestingly, I have worked with the Belize Audubon Society for the past 13 and a half years. 3 years of that I was a park ranger, and the 10 years as protected areas manager. Um, I am a Marine Protected Areas Law Enforcement mentor for the Gulf and Caribbean Fisheries Institute and MPA Connect. I currently sit on the Belize Maritime Security Conference, and this basically is a committee that meets every month to discuss maritime enforcement, along with the police, the Coast Guard, the immigration, customs. We talk about maritime enforcement across the board as it relates to Belize. I also sit on the World Heritage Advisory Committee that looks at decisions and policies related to the World Heritage sites. Your question about how I got into conservation, quite interesting. I come from a family that are boat builders. My dad is a renowned boat builder in Belize, so I always had a passion for the marine environment. And certainly, I always wanted to be a fisheries officer working on the sea, driving boats and making arrests. And interestingly, I'm doing exactly that. So, indeed, I did follow my dreams, and here I am now as an enforcement officer, among others, I'm doing fisheries enforcement.
That's fortunate. Not a lot of people usually start off wanting to do one thing and actually getting there. So good. Happy to hear that you got to do that.
Yeah, I know.
So can you tell us a bit about your work, the MPA management for your MPA and enforcement?
Yeah. So Half Moon Cay is the first protected area in Belize going back to 1929. So it's one of the oldest protected area. And it's also one of the first declared marine protected area in Central America. Half Moon Cay is home to the white-faced, red-footed booby bird. So we have a nice nesting colony for that species of bird. And if you know about birds, when you have a healthy population of marine birds, it speaks about the ecosystem and its biodiversity and its health. So the birds are good indicators and speaks volume to the health, of your reef system. Then we have the Blue Hole Natural Monument, which is a world-renowned underwater cave formation and a unique geological formation. So it's one of those to-do lists if you're an avid diver. This is quite interesting. It's world-renowned. We have the best of the best divers that have that on their checklist to do. Both MPAs are World Heritage Site. They are part of the Belize Bar Reef Reserve System. Both MPAs are located within the Lighthouse Reef Atoll. Lighthouse Reef Atoll in general is known for its dense conch fishery, so we have a rich conch population. And if you have a rich conch population, it means that you have fishers that will utilize the atoll because of its conch, So we have fishers who fish. We have an estimated 570 licensed fishers who utilize Lighthouse Reef Atoll. And then in 2016, we had the Belize Fisheries Department and partners, including the Belize Audubon Society, who rolled out Managed Access. So what is Managed Access? We asked that question. Managed Access is a closed access or a territorial user right fishery that only allows for persons who have a valid fishery folks license for a given area to fish in that specified area. So this special license comes with conditions, which includes the vessel has to have some type of vessel color code. The fishers are responsible to complete catch log, and of course, only fishers that have a valid license for that specified area is authorized to use that area. So, as enforcement officers, it's our duty to ensure that fishers follow the fisheries regulation, and also to ensure that only fishers with a valid fisher folks license fish within this given area as in accordance with their license. And further, I must emphasize that a key element of fisheries enforcement is education. There's this false perception that you have on a uniform, and you have the authority and you're the boss. It doesn't work that way. There's a lot that has to be done in terms of education, inform the stakeholders on existing regulations or new regulations. That is key. One of my lessons learned is that do not assume that people know. This is a common mistake that we all make, and we have to be persistent with our communication message. Enforcement officers are the front line. They represent the organization. They represent the government. As Belize Audubon Society represent Belize Audubon Society. Our rangers are the ambassadors. So there's a lot of PR that goes into enforcement. And I must add that partnership with enforcement agencies provided a united front to fisheries management. We're not a one-man show. We have to partner relevant authorities, and for us, we have to have that working relationship. And Belize Audubon Society, we have a close relationship with the Belize Coast Guard and the Belize Fisheries Department and the Belize Police Department as well. When it comes to enforcement, it has to be a united front. And I must also add that the success of enforcement is based on intelligence. We need intelligence, and most of our enforcements are intelligence driven. And to do that, you need to create trust within your stakeholders. The very one fishers, at the end of the day, it's their resources, that you're managing. So it's important that, we do this together. So they're the one that provides us with the information. So it's important that as enforcement officers, we maintain a cordial relationship with our fishers. I stress the word cordial because it is very important. Like I say, it's not because you have the power to make arrests means that you abuse it. And being cordial is not easy, but it's something that has to be done. And I urge all people, all enforcement officers, all MPA managers, MPA rangers, remember, be cordial, be professional. It speaks volume to who you are and the organization you represent. Lesson learned from experience, right? Another key area of enforcement that we do as Belize Audubon Society as enforcement officer, we have to ensure that tour operators, tour guides, and visitors to the protected areas are adhering to the protected areas. Again, education is key, right? Education. That is paramount importance when it comes to enforcement. Do not assume. I always speak about the 3 E's. The 3 E's: first, engineer your plan. Right? What is your plan? You have your management plan, you have your regulations, you have your communication strategy, whatever the case may be. The second is the education. Educate. And the last of the E's is enforcement. Enforcement should be the last one. You need to ensure that everyone is abreast of the regulations, the policies, whatever it is. Then enforcement could come along, right? Again, do not assume. We like to assume.
That is important. And I know the 3 E's, I've actually never heard those: engineer, educate, and enforcement.
Yes.
Definitely. Now, has there ever been any sort of unique situations that you came across during your enforcement?
I came across. There's a lot.
It was important to have a buddy in the field.
There's a lot. I mean, in enforcement, we are our brothers and sisters keeper. Each time a patrol is deployed, if you have 3 persons, 3 rangers on that vessel, alive and kicking, walking, moving, it's important that 3 rangers return back to the base alive, walking, and kicking, right? So it's we have to be our brother's keeper at all times. We need to ensure that eyes are kept on the persons we're engaging with. We have to ensure that we carry out situational assessment on the spot, looking at if there's a potential threat. Um, as from my experience, it's always important that we keep an eye out, for any possible threat, any suspected movements, fishers hand in pockets, knives close to knives, spear guns. And I could recall a couple years ago, I almost got shot with a spear gun. But yes, yeah, a fisher pull a spear gun, ready to crank it to shoot. But again, because of the situational assessment that was done by the ranger that I was accompanied by, he was able to flag it, diffuse the situation, and then I carry on with my enforcement procedures. But imagine just a simple spear gun. So we have to be our brother's keeper. It's not an easy job to do enforcement, but again, like I say, if it's three of us on that patrol vessel, when we board that vessel, we're alive, we're kicking. It's important that it's three of us return back to base safe and sound.
So I guess that's one of the most important things in patrolling, especially when you are approaching a fisherman vehicle or a vessel, would definitely be to make sure you have someone. It's always important.
You always have to buddy up. You never go on a patrol alone, because every situation is different.
Yeah.
Every situation is different. Every arrest is different.
Definitely. But and then it also goes back to being cordial, like you said earlier, with fishermen. It's so important to build relationships, right? You have to know who are the people that are regularly fishing the area, which makes it easy to even enforce some of these rules, because now they understand what the rules are, what the regulations are, as opposed to when you have things like illegal fishing happening, which sometimes it really is done by the fishermen, but if you have that relationship with them, then they are a little less likely, right, to kind of go up against you, and it makes it easier for them to report things to you, if they see something happening. And have you had many instances of that where fishermen are actually, even anonymously, they'll come to you and let you know, well, hey, Shane, this was happening, just letting you know, I know it's important to protect,
So yes, that's a valid question, and yes, we have moved away from the regular enforcement, just putting fuel in a boat and just driving around, wasting resources and time.
Yeah.
We have pushed our enforcement to more intelligence driven. Again, being cordial, like what you mentioned, creating that partnership with your stakeholders, for them to become stewards of their resources, and that comes with a lot of education, a lot of building of confidence with your stakeholders, that if information is shared with you, it will be kept confidential.
Yeah.
So our success has been based on intelligence in terms of enforcement. We have received a lot of information from stakeholders, and what we have done is looked at targeted patrols, targeting those that we know are engaged in the illegal, with the IUU, the illegal, unreported, unregulated fishery at the large scale. We have transboundary issues that we have to deal with in terms of fishing. So those are the ones that we're going after. And the only way we could do that is through the intelligence gathering, which we depend on from our stakeholders.
And one of the earlier pictures I showed, I'll pop it back up. This is you using the SMART.
Yes.
Can you tell us what SMART is and how it's used when you are doing your patrols?
Yes. So the SMART is basically a management information system platform. What it does, it has removed all that paperwork. I can remember 13 years ago when I was a park ranger doing actual enforcement on the ground every day, all day. We used to go with these big, write in the rain book and pens, and we have to write every license that we check, every vessel, and sometimes for the day we'll check like 100, like 100 fishers, especially when at the open of the Kong season. And then when we return back to base, we'll have to transfer from what is in that book to a logbook, and from the logbook to the computer to a spreadsheet. So it becomes time consuming. What the smart has done has provide an ease of access to those information. So while you're on the ground, the rangers could actually input that information into the database using the smart platform. A regular cell phone, I have one here if you could see.
Yeah.
It's a standard cell phone. This one is the black view. So the app is this smart stands for spatial monitoring and reporting tool. So the database is set here. You create your own data model based on the information you collect, and you input the information there on the spot, and then you take that to your headquarters, plug it into a computer, it upload information, download information, then it's sent to the cloud. So I have access to my staff database, the Half Moon Key database, and it looks at patrol effort, patrol location, vessels, fishers, and it looks at frequency as well in terms of how many times you have encountered these fishers, where most of the arrests the vessel boarding has been made, create hotspots, whatever you want with the data, you can create queries to run and create relevant reports. And it has made my life very easy, because it's just to open the platform, run a query, and I get all my information that is needed. I think I shared with you a nice picture with the patrol trucks.
Yes, you did. Of course. So I know the first one that you sent, it was the patrol.
Yes. So what you see, the area in brown is Lighthouse Reef Atoll.
Okay.
Right? And those little gray spots are patrol trucks. So based on what that data is showing me is that I have high concentration of patrols on the southern end of Lighthouse Reef Atoll. So our staff are focusing their patrol effort in the southern part of Lighthouse Reef Atoll. Just looking at that, I know there's a frequency of patrols at the Blue Hole Natural Monument. That little orange dot at the middle is the famous Blue Hole. So I can see that regular patrols are being done at that area. However, there's a gap. Just looking at that map, that we don't do much patrols in the northern area of that atoll. Looking at that map at face value.
Yeah.
So again, it means that there's a gap in my patrol. So I would look at that and say, okay, then we need to send some more patrols at the northern part of that atoll, to see what is going on. We need to put more presence at that location. And certainly there's variables, maybe weather, fuel, vessel, mechanical issues, whatever the case may be, that will have limited the staff from going to the northern part of the atoll.
And the next,
and this one basically looks at where fishing vessels were boarded. So all those blue dots, is where a fishing vessel was and where the staff boarded those vessels. In the database, if I click on those blue squares, it will tell me which vessel the staff boarded, the rangers boarded, who were the persons on that vessel, what time they boarded that vessel, if there was any infraction that was committed, and any follow-up.
Right, so I see that illegal fishing is in red, and this particular one has no red specks. So
Yes.
Is that you just chose a good one?
No, that was a random. This was last month's report. It was just a random. It was just a 1 month query that I ran, and that was produced. So yes, there was no infraction last month. That's good.
Yeah, I was going to say that's really good. And have you seen decline in the illegal fishing over the last year or so, especially in regards to COVID, but even before then,
I've seen what? Sorry, I had the question.
A decline in the illegal fishing, not just in the last month, but maybe in the last year, based on how COVID happened, we were hearing that the nature started to come back a little bit more.
Yeah. So we have seen a reduction of infraction, but I will tell you that that does not necessarily mean that illegal fishing um, isn't taking place. No?
Yeah.
What that means is that they could have been creative in terms of how they're doing their fishing now. Um, so, in terms of frequency of arrests, yes, that has reduced. Um, but it could be that the fishers are one step ahead of us and being creative in how they undergo their illegal fishing practices. And this is where your research and monitoring come in, where you look at your conch stock, your lobster stock, your coral health, and that will determine, if your enforcement is effective. So if you have a good, healthy conch population, it speaks volume to enforcement. If you're seeing a lot of undersized conch, and less mature conch, it means that there's something going on, and it has to be addressed. So the enforcement and its success is very dependent on your research and monitoring, right? And it guides, or where you could put your patrol efforts, where and when to put your patrol efforts.
That's really good. And I know earlier you mentioned that healthy marine seabird populations is very indicative of a very healthy marine population. And one of our last questions that we had for you that is an interesting one. You can pick whichever type of seabird you like, but who do you think would win in a fight between a seabird and an octopus?
That's an interesting question. Yeah, I think each has their own capabilities. The seabird can fly and dive. That's a big strength for them. While the octopus can only dive, I think they have a lot of super powerful tentacles, which is an advantage to them.
Yeah.
So it will trickle down to size and stamina on both species, and I think the key point here is survival. So I mean, it's two amazing creatures we're talking about. I really don't want to put one over the other.
Yeah.
Like I said, every situation is different, right?
That's true. It's true. The odds may favor the seabird one day, whereas the octopus may have an upper advantage. But the tentacles do play a bit of an advantage.
Exactly.
The bird has one beak and two legs, but the octopus they have 8.
Exactly.
But do you have any final thoughts that you'd want to share with our viewers who may want some nice quick tips for MPA management and enforcement?
Most definitely. Building compliance cannot be done in one overnight. It requires a lot of work. It requires consistent education and stakeholder engagement. I spoke about the 3 E's, engineer your plan, educate, and then enforce. Enforcement should be the last on the list to do. It requires persistent officer presence, and certainly that comes with a lot of costs. The price of fuel, is skyrocketing daily, especially here in Belize. So we have to be creative, in terms of how we maintain officer presence. It requires partnership with enforcement agencies as well. That is important. Like I mentioned, we're not an one-man island, one-man show. We need to work together with our enforcement agencies. Belize Audobon Society has been fortunate enough not to have 2 Coast Guard officers attached to our patrol team at all times. That speaks volume to our partnership and our commitment to fisheries management. And lastly, enforcement is not for everyone. I've learned that enforcement is not for everyone. So to managers out there, when doing recruitment, when you're recruiting your rangers, just remember enforcement requires boldness, discipline, and strong communication skill. Your rangers are your front line. They're ambassadors. They speak volume to your organization and your organization values. So it's important that to know that enforcement is not for everyone. And you have to be very selective in terms of who you select to represent your organization. That is a lesson learned from my end.
That's important. You said they have to be bold, disciplined, and strong communicators to be a ranger in enforcement.
Enforcement specifically.
Yeah, for enforcement. Which that does sound really important, and I can see where each of those aspects are very beneficial,
Yes.
especially strong communication, because they're going to need to be able to communicate effectively to the community, but in a way that is, again, goes back to you saying being cordial. Like, you have to understand how to speak to people, how to conduct yourself around people, and that nice balance between very social and friendly, but also that professional and you know.
Yeah, I think that there's a false perception of enforcement, especially fisheries management. I think we think that enforcement is seen as this aggressor, enforcement aggressor, and being aggressive doesn't help in any way. You know, um, being aggressive is just ego. We have to look at the reality. We're dealing with people, regardless. And I will concede that at times you do meet some real aggressive stakeholders. But again, it comes with discipline and how to. It takes two to make a tango, and you have to ensure that at the end of the day, that there's discipline in how in our actions, because it speaks volume to the organization we represent.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Shane, for being a guest on our show and talking about MPA management and enforcement. For those of our viewers, thank you for watching another episode of MPA Connections. Please follow MPA Connect on Facebook using mpaconnect.caribbean or on Instagram for MPA Connect_Caribbean to see more updates on upcoming episodes and to follow the work of the MPA Connect Network. See you guys next time.
I